The 2023 Pokemon World Championships are right around the corner, but there's something that's different about them this year. For the first time ever, the World Championships will be the first and only event of a brand new rule set. With the introduction of Pokemon Home, many Pokemon can be used in Scarlet and Violet for the first time. This also means that many of the Pokemon that have been around since the beginning of Scarlet and Violet might be suddenly better or worse than they've been all year. In the ensuing chaos, there's one Pokemon that could rise above the rest in order to take home the title. But what exactly makes Brambleghast, a Pokemon that's been around since the beginning of Scarlet and Violet, a threat? But before we talk about how Brambleghast could take home a big win, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, Esports Match. Esports Match is a new company that's aiming to help gamers looking to improve their skills, find friends, and community. They use an extensive questionnaire to allow them to learn about what your playstyle is and what you're looking for, so they can pair you up with other players with similar skill levels and goals. Esports Match also is offering things that experienced players will be interested in, such as tournaments that can have prizes of upwards of $20,000. I'll also be helping out with group coaching on the site, where I'll give talks about high-level concepts once to twice a month. I've already started doing this, and the first session went well. Check out esportsmatch.co using the link in the description, and thanks again to Esports Match for sponsoring this video. If you've followed competitive Pokemon at all this year, you're probably shocked to hear me talk about Brambleghast winning Worlds. After all, it's been around since the beginning, but it hasn't seen any competitive play. Even subpar Pokemon like Doxbun, Bellibolt, and Kilowattrel have been used at least somewhat successfully in competitions this year. And I'll be honest, looking at it in a vacuum, Brambleghast is especially bad. It's as frail as an actual tumbleweed, with an abysmal HP stat and below par defenses. But it compensates for this by also not being very fast. Its attack stat is good, but not great, and its typing and move pool both leave a lot to be desired. So why on earth do I think that this Pokemon could be good enough to win the World Championships? In order to understand, we need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. The competitive formats since the game released have centered entirely around the Pokemon native to Scarlet and Violet, the Pokemon you can naturally catch or encounter while running around Paldea. With the introduction of Pokemon Home, Worlds this year will feature a ton of returning heavy hitters, including powerful legendary Pokemon, the new Hisuian Pokemon, and a few old favorites. With the addition of so many incredibly powerful Pokemon into the pool, everything we know about competitive Pokemon has been flipped on its head. And with the competitive scene in chaos, there's an opportunity for some previously overlooked Pokemon to shine. The longer a format lasts, the more optimized it becomes. Normally, by the time the World Championships roll around, players have already discovered the strongest Pokemon and combinations, meaning any new additions need to really pull their weight. But what happens when Worlds takes place before players have had a chance to discover the strongest strategies? Answering this question by looking at past World Championships is impossible, because we've never been in this situation before. But thankfully, we can instead look at early regional level events that took place shortly after a new game was released. And what we find is interesting. Often, the teams that succeed feature Pokemon that aren't as strong as some of the main Pokemon of a format, but who match up well against them. Some examples include Durant and Duraludon from the first regional of Sword and Shield. Though neither Pokemon experienced lasting success throughout the format, their strong matchup against Togekiss and other prevalent threats allowed them to take home big finishes before the Togekiss teams became more optimized. In Scarlet and Violet's first regional, Garganacl took home the win due to it being extremely difficult to remove and capable of winning battles on its own once the key threats were removed. Garganacl failed to maintain a foothold in the competitive scene as teams became better optimized, but at the beginning, before everything had been figured out, it was perfectly positioned to take home a big win. One of the strongest emerging pairings in this new Worlds format is Urshifu Rapid Strike and Tornadus Incarnate. Urshifu was one of the stronger Pokemon from Sword and Shield, but it wasn't the strongest by far. And that's because when it was introduced in Sword and Shield, competitive play included Dynamax, limiting its overall power. Want to know how balanced Urshifu is now that there's no way to prevent it from hitting through Protect or doubling your HP so it doesn't knock you out in one hit? Urshifu is one of the absolute strongest Pokemon due to its Unseen Fist ability, allowing it to ignore Protect. and its signature move always landing a critical hit. Game Freak anticipated this somewhat by weakening the power of Urshifu's Single Strike signature move, but for some reason, Urshifu Rapid Strike was left untouched. Because the move Surging Strikes hits 3 times and each hit is guaranteed to crit, Urshifu can't be slowed down with Intimidate or Reflect or stopped by a Focus Sash. And because its ability ignores Protect, positioning around it is very difficult. But Urshifu becomes even scarier when introduced to the second half of this duo, Tornadus. Tornadus' ability Prankster allows it to use non-damaging moves with increased priority, including the powerful support move Tailwind, which doubles its team's speed stats for the next 4 turns. When paired with Urshifu, this eliminates any hope of KOing it before it attacks. To make matters worse, Tornadus can also learn Rain Dance, further boosting Urshifu's power, which can be augmented even more by terastallizing Urshifu into a water type. In other words, this duo creates an absurdly powerful Pokemon that nearly always moves first, can't be slowed down with Intimidate, can't be outplayed with Protect, and outputs massive amounts of damage. Even dedicating a defensive Terra type won't stop this combination, as the types that resist water don't resist flying or fighting. And this is where Brambleghast comes in. Thanks to its grass and ghost typing, it resists Surging Strikes and is even immune to close combat, and it can KO Urshifu in return with a powerful grass type attack. But the real key here is Brambleghast's unique ability Wind Rider, which not only makes it immune to all wind category moves, it also gives it an attack boost if one is aimed at Brambleghast or if Tailwind is set up on Brambleghast's side. The attacking moves Tornadus normally carries are Bleak Wind Storm, Icy Wind, and Hurricane, which are all wind category moves. Meaning, Brambleghast is one of the only Pokemon in the game that is able to handle the ridiculous offensive pressure from Tornadus and Urshifu. But even beyond countering this common duo, Brambleghast has its merits. Wind Rider also gives it an immunity to other common moves such as Heat Wave, Springtide Storm, Sandsear Storm, Wild Bolt Storm, and Blizzard. If Brambleghast is in front of a Pokemon like Heatran who really wants to use Heat Wave on Brambleghast's partner, its only choice is to either not click Heat Wave or give Brambleghast an attack boost. And the other moves Heatran carries are normally Earth Power and Terra Grass, Terra Blast, neither of which can threaten Brambleghast. Brambleghast's grass and ghost typing causes it to have a number of weaknesses without that many resistances, but it does offer some other benefits. Ghost is the only type in the game with multiple immunities to normal and fighting. This is especially relevant in the current format as Extreme Speed Dragonite and Facade Ursaluna are both popular. It's also immune to powder moves like Rage Powder and Spore thanks to its grass typing. These immunities, in addition to its absurd ability, causes it to have a surprisingly positive matchup into a number of popular Pokemon in addition to Urshifu, Tornadus, and Heatran. In the right situations, Brambleghast can come out on top against Amoonguss, Cresselia, Ursaluna, Fluttermane, Iron Hands, Rillaboom, Regieleki, and several other top threats. Of course, none of this means that Brambleghast will do well. It's still held back by its stats in a pretty major way. And if we'd had 4 or 5 months of this new format before Worlds, I'd have said there's almost no chance for Brambleghast to do well. The format would have become too optimized for a Pokemon with stats as bad as Brambleghast's. But the thing is, we don't have 4 or 5 months. We barely have over 1 month. And so it's possible that the conditions will be just right for Brambleghast to shine. There's a lot that we still don't know about this format, so it's totally possible that my hunch about Brambleghast will be way off. But I think that's what's so exciting about this Worlds in particular. Even players like me who have played in like 10 World Championships still don't know what to expect. And even if Brambleghast doesn't see any play at the World Championships, given these conditions, I'm sure that a different, overlooked Pokemon will be able to shine.